Hi everybody. We are going to talk about Brussels sprouts and asparagus today. Talicia Simpson, one of our wonderful Patreon members, had asked a question in a Whole30 group about how to do Brussels sprouts and how to do asparagus while we were at it. So we're going to start with Brussels sprouts. And there's several different ways you can do it, but we're adapting today's recipe primarily so that we can do Whole30 approved. We have 4 strips of bacon, and the bacon is not cured, it is smoked, but there are 4 ingredients. That is the pork itself, salt, celery powder, and water. So there's no sugar in there, which is a Whole30 compliant part of this. Many times we will go to Whole Foods. There's quite a few varieties out there that you can get that are Whole30 compliant, so we encourage you to read your labels closely. Basically what we're going to do, and we'll take you through the motions here in a second. Bill and I like to use cast iron, but if you don't have cast iron, don't freak out. You can use a nice stainless steel skillet for the same preparation. Because we're actually going to start by cooking the bacon, rendering some of that fat. Then we're going to add some sweet Vidalia onion and the Brussels sprouts, kind of let them get a little bit brown, and then we're going to pop them in a 400-degree oven to finish them off. So let's start with the bacon. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you're just cutting it into what a lot of people will term as lardons. It's just small pieces of bacon. So you'll just want to rough chop them this way. We used 4 pieces because this is a single package of Brussels sprouts, and so you don't really need that much. The flavor though really adds that nice smokiness to it, gives you that pork inside of the dish when you're eating it, so it's a great flavor profile. Okay, we've chopped up the bacon. We actually turned the pan on, the heat on under the pan about medium high to high, and I'm going to back that off just a tiny bit because what we want to do is we want to render the fat. You'll get to hear that wonderful sizzle, but we don't want to cook it till it's just hard and dark like you would for a breakfast bacon. So we're going to go ahead and let that start. All right, we're going to rough chop this onion. The first thing you need to do is get all of that skin off of it. Take off both ends, and we like to keep a garbage bowl handy so that we can just easily discard everything without having to make an extra trip to the trash can every time we're cleaning a vegetable. I like the Vidalias because they have a sweetness and not that sharp, typical yellow onion or Spanish onion. The easiest way to do the onion is just do a rough chop. And if you keep the end intact, trying to make this so you can see it easily. You can see I sliced vertically, and then I'm going to come across and make sure that your fingers are not in the way. And we do some horizontal cuts. And that's when you can take and just do a nice big chop on there. Add that to your pan, and we'll move on to the Brussels sprouts. The onion's in the pan. You can see that bacon is not crisping up, but see all of that rendered fat in that pan? This is what's going to flavor your Brussels sprouts really nicely. So you just want to be mindful of those while you're doing the prep work that you need to do on the Brussels sprouts. All right, easy peasy on the Brussels sprouts. The best thing to do, you'll see there is a stem piece at the bottom. I like to take those off about 1/4 of an inch above that. And then you want to quarter these. And what you're going to find is most of the sort of ugly leaves will fall off when you do the quartering. Go ahead and let that happen. If they don't fall off naturally, just pull it off. And we're just going to start adding those to the pan until we've made it through all of these Brussels sprouts. All right, so we have quartered and de-stemmed all of those wonderful Brussels sprouts. The onions are in there, the bacon's going, and as you can see, we're starting to get a little bit of color. And the color is going to happen on both the Brussels sprouts as well as the bacon. We're not going to let this go too long because we're actually going to finish this in the oven. The oven's been preheated at 400 degrees. We're going to put it in and set the timer for 20 minutes, and we'll check it for tenderness. You don't want them raw but you also don't want them mushy. So it's a matter of just continuing to start with a base amount of time and then check every 5 to 8 minutes after that till you get the desired consistency that you want in your vegetable. All right, we're ready to go in the oven, but before we do, we're gonna add a little bit of salt. We typically only use kosher salt. As you can see, I'm just doing it by not measure, just by feel, and basically it is between my 2 fingers, not a ton of it. I think if I had to equate it to a measurement, it'd probably be about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt. For the pepper, you just want to cover the top of it evenly to where you can see it, but not overly pepper that. The last thing we're going to do is give this a really good stir. We want to make sure each Brussels sprout is covered with a bit of that bacon fat before we go in the oven, and that we spread that salt and pepper around as evenly as possible. All right, we're ready to go. All right, this is your last look before it goes in the oven. We're at 400 degrees. In they go, and set the timer, 20 minutes. We'll see you in a few. Asparagus, pretty simple. We do like to choose asparagus that is a smaller stalk. I feel they're less woody, meaning it's a much more tender bite when you have a finished product coming out of the oven. So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna take about 2 inches off the bottom, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Some people like to pick each stalk up and naturally let it split. I just find this much easier. And then you're going to spread them. As you can see, we're using a nice cookie sheet, heavy duty. And we actually have put a piece of parchment paper on here. You do not need to do that. If you don't have parchment, no problem. We just thought it was easier for you to see it, so we lined the pan. The easiest piece of doing this is you're basically adding just a little bit of olive oil. You're adding a little bit of salt, and you're giving it some pepper. What I just do is I like to just roll it a little bit, make sure that oil has gotten on each stalk, make sure they're spread out evenly as possible. And then they're gonna go in a 400-degree oven for another probably 20 minutes. Alrighty, it has been 20 minutes. We're gonna take a look at these, make sure that they are the right tooth, if you will, of what we want. And you can see the fork goes through it easily, but they don't get all mushy and just fall apart. So we consider these done. So we're gonna take these out of the oven. All right, as you can see, these are quite done. Now I have set them on top of the stove top and turned the heat on. Yes, this pan is extremely hot, but what we like to do, and what is Whole30 compliant, is add just a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. Just gives it a little bit of richness. And you can hear that nice little sizzle from the heat of the pan. You just want to make sure that you stir those around to evenly distribute that wonderful vinegar flavor. And then we're going to plate them up. All right, team, here you go. Talicia, this is for you. There are your Brussels sprouts. We hope you guys enjoy. All right, let's check this asparagus. Looks beautiful. You can see they're not wilted or fallen apart, and the fork is going through it nice and easy, but there's still just a little bit of crunch. So we're gonna take it out because we're actually gonna give it a little bit more flavor before we put it in the oven for the last couple of minutes. As you can see, these are beautiful. The pan is still warm, so be careful. But what we're gonna do is add a couple of things. It really dresses asparagus up, enhances the flavor, and it's pretty simple ingredients. So I do like to add a little zest. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm using, it's called a microplane. Easy to find. TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Home Goods. Just look in any of the gadget side, even in your grocery stores, and I'm sure you can find one pretty easily. So just make sure you've got a nice even layer. You don't have to zest the entire lemon. But what else I'm going to do is just add a little bit of juice. So I'm going to take that lemon, I'm going to use a half of it and just let some of that juice go up and down those spears. The last thing I'm going to do is put some Parmesan on. This you can skip depending on whether you're Whole30 or whatever. If it's not allowed on your diet, please eliminate it. But you do have the lemon and the lemon zest, and that's always a great flavor enhancement. So this is going to go right back in the oven for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to plate it. What you're going to see is that the little bit of parm we put on there, you can see how it started to brown up a little bit. We don't want to let it go too far because you're going to end up with mushy asparagus. So let's plate this. Just a nice lovely plate. Lay it out, and as you can see, it's really easy to use tongs with this. There are fancy little things called asparagus forks and spoons and stuff like that, but just as easy to use a nice set of tongs. Enjoy, everybody.